My husband, David, and I have been together for 14 years, married for 9. We were the couple everyone looked up to. Our friends always said we had the kind of love people dreamed of. I believed that for a long time, too. I thought we were rock solid, but it turns out I was just blind. Things started changing about a year ago. David began working longer hours, often claiming he had last-minute meetings or after-hours projects that required him to stay late. At first, I didn't think much of it. We were saving for a bigger house, and I knew he was putting in extra effort at work to help us get there. I'd pack him dinners to take to the office. We'd FaceTime sometimes when he worked late, and it felt like we were still connected even with the distance. But then, it started to feel off. He was always distracted, constantly on his phone, texting someone or checking emails. He'd take his phone with him everywhere, into the bathroom, to the kitchen, even out for a quick smoke on the porch. He started locking it, which he never used to do. When I asked him about it, he said it was just for work security. I wanted to trust him, so I let it go. But the gut feeling that something wasn't right wouldn't go away. I started noticing more red flags, like how he'd sometimes come home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, or how his excuses for being late became more elaborate and hard to believe. He'd tell me stories that just didn't add up, like how he accidentally left his wallet at the office and had to go back to get it late at night. It didn't make sense, but I convinced myself that he was just stressed with work. The turning point came one weekend when David told me he had to go out of town for a work conference. Normally, he'd tell me all about his trips, but this time he was oddly vague. He didn't give me many details, just that it was important and that he'd be gone for 2 nights. I kissed him goodbye, told him I loved him, and watched him drive off. I wanted to believe him so badly, but something in my gut told me to dig deeper. That night, I decided to look at his credit card statements. I know it sounds like a breach of trust, but I was desperate for answers. When I logged in, I was shocked by what I saw. There were charges from expensive restaurants and hotels, none of which he had mentioned. But the biggest red flag? A charge from a jewelry store. David hadn't bought me any jewelry recently, and I certainly hadn't asked for any. I felt sick. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the charges, each one confirming what I was afraid to admit to myself. He wasn't just working late or going on business trips. He was spending money on someone else. I needed to know more, so I went through his email. I found nothing suspicious at first, but then I remembered he had a second, older email account that he rarely used. When I logged into that one, the truth hit me like a freight train. There were hundreds of emails between David and a woman named Erica. They'd been seeing each other for almost a year, meeting up in secret during his late nights and business trips. The emails were explicit, full of plans to meet at hotels and romantic weekend getaways. They talked about their future, about how much they loved each other, and how they couldn't wait to be together without hiding. I felt like I was living someone else's nightmare. This couldn't be my David, my husband, the man I'd built my life with. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, but I just sat there, numb, staring at the screen. He'd been living a double life, lying to me for months, maybe even longer. The next day, I called my best friend, Sarah. She was the only person I could think of who might understand. When I told her everything, she was just as shocked as I was. "You need to confront him," she said. "You can't let this go on any longer." I didn't know if I was ready to confront him. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen the emails, that it was all just a bad dream. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't live in denial. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. David came home 2 days later, acting like everything was normal. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and sat down to watch TV like nothing was wrong. I felt like I was going to explode. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to talk to you." He looked up from the TV, confused. "What's wrong?" "I know about Erica." The color drained from his face. He froze, staring at me like a deer caught in headlights. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice shaking now. "I saw the emails, the credit card charges, everything. I know you've been seeing her for months." David's expression changed from shock to guilt in an instant. He didn't even try to deny it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen."
Tonight was supposed to be special. It was our 10th wedding anniversary, and I had spent weeks planning the perfect surprise for my husband, Dan. I hired a babysitter for our kids, decorated the living room with candles and flowers, and even cooked his favorite meal. I wanted to show him how much I still loved him after all these years. Dan was supposed to come home at 7 p.m., but by 8 p.m. he still wasn't back. I texted him, and he said he was working late and would be home soon. I didn't think much of it. He's had a lot on his plate at work lately. But then I noticed something odd. My best friend Lisa wasn't replying to my messages either. We usually text all day, but tonight, nothing. My heart sank as a terrible thought crossed my mind. I tried to push it away, telling myself I was being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Finally, at 9 p.m., I decided to take matters into my own hands. I grabbed the car keys and drove to Dan's office. I told myself I was just going to bring him dinner and remind him of the special night I had planned. But deep down, I knew I was looking for something else. When I arrived, the office was dark. I parked around the corner, got out, and started walking toward the building. As I got closer, I noticed his car wasn't in its usual spot. That uneasy feeling in my gut grew stronger. I turned to head back to my car, but then I saw them. Dan and Lisa, standing too close for comfort, right by the entrance of the office. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. The way he leaned in to kiss her, the way she smiled up at him, the way they touched like they had done it 1,000 times before. I stood frozen in shock, my world crashing down around me. I wanted to scream, to run, to confront them. But all I could do was watch as my husband and my best friend betrayed me in the worst way possible. I eventually found the strength to get back to my car and drive home. I haven't said anything yet. I don't know how. Right now, I'm lying in bed, wide awake, replaying everything in my head. I don't know what to do or where to go from here. All I know is that nothing will ever be the same again. So, I've been married to my husband, Mark, for 7 years. He's always had to travel a lot for work, and I've never really questioned it. He's a charming guy, good-looking, successful, the whole package. But lately something felt off. He was more distant, kept his phone on him all the time, and was suddenly working late more often than usual. Last month, he told me he had to go on a business trip for a few days. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed he was being weirdly secretive about the details. Normally, he'd at least tell me which city he's going to. But this time, he was vague and evasive. I decided to trust my gut and do a little digging. I checked our shared credit card statement and found a charge for a fancy hotel that wasn't in the city he said he'd be in. That was my first red flag. Then I noticed he'd left his laptop at home, something he never does on work trips. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it up. I found his email still logged in and, well, I wish I hadn't. There were messages between him and some woman named Rachel that were far too personal to be work-related. They talked about their time together and how much they missed each other. The most recent email was from just before he left, saying he couldn't wait to see her again on this business trip. I was devastated. My whole world just shattered in that moment. But I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I decided to gather more evidence. I went through his phone records, and sure enough, there were late-night calls and texts to this same woman. When he came back home, I acted normal. I pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was seething. I took the time to consult with a lawyer, get my finances in order, and figure out my next steps. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat him down and told him I knew about Rachel. The look on his face was priceless. He knew he was caught. He tried to deny it at first, but when I showed him the evidence, he broke down and admitted everything. Now, I'm in the process of filing for divorce. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am. It hurts like hell, but I know I deserve better than a cheating husband. Thanks for letting me vent, Reddit. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. My husband, Matt, has always been a fitness enthusiast. He goes to the gym almost every day, and I never questioned it. He's always been in great shape, and I figured his dedication was just part of who he is. But lately, I noticed that his workouts were taking longer and longer. He'd leave for the gym and sometimes not come back for 3-4 hours. When I asked him about it, he said he was getting extra cardio in or helping a friend with their routine. I wanted to believe him, but something didn't sit right with me. So one day, I decided to go to the gym at the same time as him, without telling him. I got there, parked outside, and waited. After about 15 minutes, I saw him walk out of the gym, hand in hand with another woman. They didn't see me as they got into her car and drove off. I followed them, heart pounding in my chest. They ended up at a nearby hotel. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My husband, the man I trusted completely, was cheating on me. I drove back home, numb, trying to figure out what to do next. When he got back, he acted like nothing had happened, talking about his intense workout and how tired he was. I haven't confronted him yet. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. I feel like my whole marriage was a lie. It started innocently enough. My husband, Jake, left his laptop open on the dining table. He had gone out to pick up some groceries, and I sat down to check my own emails. When I opened the browser, his email was still logged in. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But when the subject line of an email caught my eye, I couldn't help but click. The email was from someone named Sarah. It was short, just a few lines, but those lines said it all. I miss you. Can't wait to see you next weekend. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mind raced. Who was Sarah? How long had this been going on? I searched his inbox and found dozens of emails between them. Some were flirty, others were explicit, but all of them pointed to the fact that my husband was having an affair. The most recent emails were from just last week, making plans to meet up while I was out of town visiting my sister. When Jake got back, I pretended everything was fine. But inside I was dying. I haven't confronted him yet because I don't know how. I feel so betrayed, so hurt. I just needed to share this because I don't know who else to talk to. I'm not ready to tell my family or friends. I just don't know what to do next. Don't know. This happened last night, and I'm still in shock. My husband, Eric, told me he was going out with some old friends from college. I didn't think much of it. I had plans to go out for dinner with my sister anyway, so I wished him a good time and went on with my evening. My sister and I ended up at this little Italian place we love. As we were eating, I happened to look up, and there he was. Eric, sitting at a table across the room. But he wasn't with his college buddies. He was with a woman. They were holding hands across the table, talking in that intimate way that made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My first instinct was to march over there and confront him, but my sister held me back. She convinced me to leave and deal with it at home, away from the public eye. When Eric got home later, he acted like everything was fine, telling me how much fun he had catching up with his friends. I'm still reeling from the betrayal. I haven't said anything yet, but I know I can't keep this bottled up for long. I just don't know how to start that conversation without completely breaking down. My husband, Tom, is a successful lawyer, so late nights and dinners with clients are pretty normal. I've always trusted him, never really questioned where he was or who he was with. But last week, something felt off. He was heading out for a business dinner, and usually, he's casual about these things. But this time, he seemed nervous, like he was hiding something. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. I felt ridiculous doing it, like I was being paranoid, but I just couldn't shake the feeling. He said the dinner was at a downtown restaurant, and sure enough, that's where he went. But when I saw him walk in, I noticed he wasn't alone. He was with a woman, younger and dressed to the nines. Definitely not a client. I parked the car and waited. I couldn't bring myself to go inside, but I stayed long enough to see them through the window. The way they were laughing, leaning in close, this wasn't business. It was something much more personal. When he came home later that night, he acted like everything was normal. I haven't confronted him yet. I feel like I need more proof, something concrete. But every time I look at him now, I feel sick to my stomach. The trust I had in him is completely shattered. I'm just not sure how to move forward from here. My husband and I have been together for 12 years, and we've always been the couple everyone envied. We were best friends, inseparable, or so I thought. A few months ago, he started a new job, and that's when things changed. He was always too busy to spend time with me, and when we were together, he seemed distracted. Last night, I found out why. He was asleep, and I noticed a notification pop up on his phone. It was from a woman named Lauren. The message was innocent enough, but when I scrolled through their conversation, I saw that it wasn't just a work relationship. They had been meeting up outside of work, and the messages were filled with intimate details. I feel so betrayed. He was my best friend, and now I don't even recognize him. I confronted him this morning, and he admitted to the affair. I don't know what to do. I thought we had everything, and now I feel like I have nothing. We've been married for 7 years, and I always thought we were solid. But over the past few months, my husband, Ryan, started acting distant. He wasn't home as much, always working late, and he barely spent any time with me and the kids. One night, while he was in the shower, I couldn't resist checking his phone. That's when I found out. There were dozens of messages between him and a woman named Claire. They were flirty, intimate, and they made plans to meet up at hotels while I was at work. The worst part? Ryan had been seeing Claire for over a year. I had no idea. I felt like my whole marriage was a lie. When I confronted him, he broke down and admitted everything. He begged me to forgive him, but I don't know if I can. I don't know what to do next. I feel so lost and hurt, and I don't know how to move forward. I've always trusted my husband, Mark. He's the kind of guy who's super laid back and easygoing, which is why it was so surprising when I noticed him acting strange a few weeks ago. He started coming home late, giving vague explanations about meetings that ran over. I didn't think too much of it at first, but when he started being extra secretive with his phone, I started to get suspicious. Last night, my worst fears were confirmed. Mark fell asleep on the couch and his phone buzzed with a message. I couldn't help but look, and what I saw made my stomach drop. It was a text from his coworker Megan saying how much she missed him and how she couldn't wait for their next meeting. I confronted him as soon as he woke up. He tried to deny it at first, but when I showed him the text, he couldn't lie anymore. He admitted that he'd been seeing Megan for the past 3 months. I don't know what to do next. I feel so betrayed, and my heart is shattered.
My husband Dan has always had a close relationship with his sister, and I never thought much of it. They'd grab lunch, catch up, and talk regularly. But recently, he started spending more time at her place, supposedly helping her with a home renovation project. At first, I thought it was sweet, but something didn't sit right with me. Last weekend, I decided to drive by her house just to see what was going on. I couldn't believe what I saw. Dan wasn't working on any renovation. He was in the backyard, sitting way too close to a woman I'd never seen before, laughing and flirting. It didn't take long to realize that this wasn't his sister's house. It was someone else's. I waited until he got home later that night, And when I confronted him, he confessed that he'd been seeing this woman for the past few months. I feel so betrayed. He used his family as an excuse to cover up his affair. I have no idea what to do next, and I'm devastated.